This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, and we've got kind of a special episode today because if you've been following the show, you probably knew I was caddying for Sam Meuret in the last round of the U.S. Open qualifying just a couple of weeks ago, and so of course we had to do another podcast after that awesome day of golf, 36 holes over in Columbus, Ohio. Had to do a podcast with Sam to recap that day because it was far and away the best golf experience I've ever been a part of. And so obviously this was a lot of fun to do. Now I should point out here that first of all, I felt really lucky to be on the bag for Sam because most of the guys at this final round of the U.S. Open qualifying are PGA Tour players. So they have professional caddies. And even the guys that weren't PGA Tour players, they're either Korn Ferry guys or high-end amateurs, or they have a local professional caddy that know these courses. But then you have me there that's just Sam's buddy, and I'm not necessarily a golf expert. So I felt really grateful that Sam let me carry the bag for him. And then there was this other side of me that thought, should Sam have maybe his brother who's a PGA pro or another golf expert on the bag that can help him with club selection, help him read greens. And so I had a lot of pressure on myself just to make sure that I didn't mess it up for Sam, because I really think that a good caddy out there, Sam might disagree with me, but I think a good professional caddy out there could have possibly saved him a stroke or two throughout that day. And so, props to Sam for letting me carry the bag across 36 holes, the longest day in golf. And Sam and I were out there. It was an awesome day. And, Sam is a great golfer. He's an awesome athlete. He's a great golfer. His ceiling as a golfer is really high. I think his best rounds are in front of him. And I think Sam has a real chance to qualify for U.S. Open in his golf career. He's that good. And so it was awesome to see him get to this stage of the process for the first time. And he played some really good holes. He had a really good stretch of golf throughout that day. And it was awesome just to have this experience with him. I also got to give a special shout out to Sam's wife, Olivia, who was there as part of our cheering section that day. So she walked through every step of the longest day in golf with us. And also a special shout out to Jim and Lori, Sam's parents, who I've gotten to know a little bit throughout this process. They are the nicest people in the world. So special shout out to the rest of the Sam Meuret team there that spent the entire couple of days with us in Columbus, Ohio. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this episode of the podcast. Sam and I, we really took our time to break down this day of golf because it was really special. We got to rub shoulders with some of the best golfers in the world. I mean, we're talking Padraig Harrington, Ricky Fowler, Jason Duffner. There was over $600 million in career PGA Tour earnings in that field that day, and we were right there rubbing shoulders with them all day long. Sam was competing with them, and Sam belonged there. That was really cool to see. So I think you guys are going to really enjoy this episode if you've enjoyed the previous two episodes that I've done with Sam. But let us know. I love hearing feedback from you guys on a regular basis. And if you like what we're doing here on the podcast, make sure to subscribe to the Moonlight Graham Show wherever it is that you get your podcast. And we would love it, folks, if you left us a 5-star review. You can also follow the show, of course, on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We love hearing from you guys each and every week. So enjoy today's episode on the longest day in golf with myself and my player, Sam Meuret. I'm back with Sam Meuret. Sam, this is the third time on the podcast. You are the only guy ever, the only Moonlighter ever to make 3 appearances on the Moonlight Graham Show. Welcome back.
It's good to be here. I'm honored to be the first time 3-timer, but it's a little bittersweet.
It is a little bittersweet. The last time we were talking, we were leading up to the final qualifying of the 2021 U.S. Open Golf Tournament. This might be the most anticipated podcast episode we've ever done. My phone has been blowing up all week saying, when are you guys going to do a recap episode with Sam? So here it is. We are going to talk about, it was last Monday. So it was 10 days ago. 10 days ago, you played in the final round of the U.S. Open qualifier over in Columbus, Ohio. It was 36 holes, one day, a field of, I think, 151 guys. 16 of those guys from that field advanced to the U.S. Open, which is being played right now. Actually, the first round is going on right now of the U.S. Open. And it was maybe one of the best sports experiences I've ever had, especially probably the number one golf experience I've ever had. When you look back on it now, real quick, how do you think back on that day?
It's a little tough.
We didn't make it. We didn't make it. Otherwise, we'd be in California right now.
Yeah. This would be a different podcast. It wouldn't be done today if I had made it. But it's a little tough looking back. It was a good day. It was a fun day. But it hurts a little looking back. It wasn't all fun the day of. But looking back, it's a little tough.
So the last time we talked, we were coming off the high of the local qualifying. We were eating our Culvers. We were feeling pretty good, and it's always fun to have something out there because the anticipation of something is sometimes better than the final product. But one thing I wanted to cover here is those 2 weeks that you had prior to the tournament, but after the last podcast that we do, where you're preparing for, maybe qualifying in the U.S. Open. How did you handle those 2 weeks? What were you doing on a daily basis to get your golf game ready for U.S. Open qualifying?
That's kind of what makes it a little tough, is that I practice more than I have been practicing, which is still not that much, but every day I'm out there for an hour. I'm hitting balls and I'm chipping and putting. And I really thought I was finding a little bit of a groove. I was starting to hit a little better, played a couple good rounds in between. But that was kind of it for prep.
Yeah, because at one point you sent me a text and said, hey, we might have a shot.
It was about a week after the qualifier. I was hitting balls for a few days in a row and really, really was hitting it well. And I started joking to some people, to my family, to you, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to qualify. And then about 5 days later, I was still hitting it well, and I think I convinced myself. I joked enough that I was like, I think I might actually do this.
Did you believe it?
A little. I mean, it gets into your mind, but not. I mean, I knew what I was up against. I wasn't completely delusional, but I was just excited that I was actually playing well, because going into the last one, I didn't feel like I was. And I knew if I played, it sounds weird, but if I played the way I played that day, I could kind of get away with it out there. But I knew at the next level, I'm going to have to hit it a little better and have a little bit of a cleaner round. And I was excited that I at least had a chance to play well, which I wasn't sure that I had the week prior.
Your ceiling's pretty high. When you're playing well, you have a pretty high ceiling, I'd say, with golf, just because you hit the ball so far. And so when you're driving it the way you want to drive it, you can compete, above your pay grade.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's a really big advantage when I'm hitting the driver well and hitting it long. That I do feel like I can play a little bit better than, and that's what happened in the local, was just that it was just kind of an advantage of distance, and the way the golf course played and the way I kind of plotted around was that I didn't hit it well enough. I wouldn't say I deserved the score that I got, but sometimes that can kind of happen when the driver stays in play.
So let's talk about why you select Columbus, because there are 5 other qualifiers, final qualifiers across the United States. There was one in Illinois. There's one down in Florida at the Bear Club, Jack Nicklaus's place down there. I'm sure there's one in California. Dallas area had one. Not sure where the other one was. But why did you want to pick Columbus, Ohio?
Every year, the Columbus, Ohio qualifier is the Monday after the Memorial. And so basically half that field, or at least half that field, isn't already exempt into the U.S. Open, so they drive across town and they play in Columbus. And so I've always known that, and I've always watched that qualifier and thought, that's kind of amazing. Half of those guys are PGA Tour players that are just driving across town. And so whenever I've signed up for the local, I always put that as my top priority to play there.
Yeah. Yeah, and this year that field lived up to the billing. I think that Monday qualifier Twitter account actually tweeted out that morning that the field at the Columbus qualifier had over $550 million in career earnings. I think double-digit majors were won out of the field, and you had like over, I think, 5 or 6 guys that were major winners in the field. And so just to give you guys out there an idea, this is not even the entire field, but these are the ones that I could just write down on one page. So you had Rafa Cabrera-Bello, Adam Hadwin, Martin Laird, Kevin Tway, Padraig Harrington, Cameron Davis, Pierce Sincoudi, who's a top amateur, Ricky Fowler, Eric Van Rooyen, Harry Higgs, Hudson Swafford, Doug Gim, Nick Taylor, Keegan Bradley, Woody Austin, JT Poston, Ches Reavie, Brennan Steele, Henrik Norlander, Johnny Vegas, Charles Schwartzel, Aaron Baddeley, JB Holmes, Jason Duffner. Like, that's just the guys that I could fit on that page, and there's just more and more and more. And so this was a legit like JV PGA event. Like, I guess it was similar, and I don't mean JV. It was similar to like the PGA event that happens when the British Open is happening.
Yeah,
like it was like the same kind of field as that.
Yeah, it's about like that, but the field, I mean, that field is cut in half. There's not quite as many guys that are at that level, but yeah, it's kind of comparable.
So when you see Columbus, obviously you have never played either one of these courses, right? And so this is 36 holes, 2 separate courses. There's an old-timer classic course called Brookside, and then kind of a newer course. It's probably, 20 or 30 years old, called the Lakes, which kind of looks like a Glen Oaks Country Club or something like that is kind of what it looks like. So when did you get into town? How did you scout those courses out? What was your prep for those courses?
So I got into town Friday night. My wife and I flew in. Looking for a nice weekend in Columbus. And
shout out Liv.
Shout out
Wife
Liv.
of the Liv. Wife of the year.
Wife of the year. She had quite the week, quite the long weekend and Monday. But I was just going to play one of those each day was the plan.
So you played Brookside and the Lakes. Which one did you play first?
I played Brookside first.
Okay. And what was your initial thought of Brookside? And Brookside is the older course and also the course that we started on.
Yes. Brookside was about what I expected for like a 1920s design golf course that has been beefed up to handle a kind of a championship style event in 2021. A really narrow, big trees, really thick rough, and plenty of length. So, I mean, the thing that stood out was the rough. The greens there had been enough rain in Columbus that it wasn't that firm. So the greens were tough, but not unmanageable. But
the rough was crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
Like really, really thick. And it's hard to emphasize that enough. Like even when I was watching the U.S. Open today, I thought that rough is nothing compared to Brookside at a couple places.
Yeah, I mean, it holds up to anything I've kind of seen. And it was narrow enough that you could kind of get away with it even if you were just off the fairway. You could get some really bad lies, but it really got bad in the trees because the rough is so thick in the trees that it's so difficult to play any type of shot other than just like
hacking it out,
which you can manage if you've got a clear shot to the green, but you can't really manage from the trees.
That was the thing about the rough. Not only was it really thick, but it was really thick right away. So if you missed the first cut of the fairway, even by 3 inches, you're in some really, really thick rough, where a lot of courses, the rough will be tapered a little bit, so they'll give you a little bit of room for maybe 5 yards off of the first cut, but it was super thick right away, and so you really were penalized if you missed the fairway.
Yeah. There were actually multiple times in the practice round where I lost a ball next to the green. I walked up. I think it was twice I walked up to the green to hit my chip shot, not really paying attention because it was a practice round, not scoring anything, and hit a ball out of the rough and walked up to the green. It was somebody else's ball. And so that gives you a little bit of an idea that you can barely see the ball in some places.
Yeah, okay, so that's Brookside, and then the Lakes. Let's talk about the Lakes then. It's a newer course, really nice country club, totally different feel of a course than the old school Brookside.
Yeah, just a lot more room to play with. The fairways, the rough was pretty similar in a lot of places, but the fairways were so much wider, a lot fewer trees. And there, fairways are wider, and even if you miss the fairway in a lot of places, you have a clear shot to the green. So it's bad. You can't spin it. You can't really control the distance, but you can kind of manage that if you can just kind of hack it out up towards the green and hopefully just catch a piece and make a par.
After you play 2 practice rounds, one at Brookside, one at the Lakes, how are you feeling about your chances?
I was, I don't know about how I was feeling about my chances, but I was feeling okay. I hit it really well that weekend. And I kind of knew starting at Brookside, if I can play well at Brookside, which I think playing well for me was only about even par, that I would actually be in okay shape because I thought the Lakes was pretty scoreable. If I was playing well enough to play around even there, I thought I could do something at Lakes.
Let's talk about what those practice rounds are like, because you mentioned to me that like a lot of guys were there playing practice rounds. Like Johnny Vegas was there, driving all over the courses, dropping balls down, playing multiple shots. So what was the practice? I wasn't there with you. What was it like playing and seeing other guys and measuring yourself up to the competition like a couple of days ahead of time?
It was a lot of fun because I called the week in advance and told them I was playing a practice round, get some tee times. And I was kind of under the impression that they were really packed and they were just going to mix us in with some members out there. I didn't know what they were doing for tee times. And so when I showed up, I thought I was just going to be playing around with maybe some people that were playing in the qualifier, maybe some members. But it ended up just being only guys that were playing in the tournament on Monday. And so it's a little different than I maybe expected and a little bit more of a serious practice round than I was prepared for.
How'd Olivia like it?
She was okay. I talked her into coming for the weekend because I said, listen, you don't even have to come to the course on the weekend. I know it's a ton of golf on Monday. You can just do whatever you want.
Hang out
Columbus.
by the hotel pool.
Exactly. And then she got there, realized she didn't want to hang out by the hotel pool at all. And so she came out there, and she was out there for the whole time.
Far too long.
Yeah. And it was a battle for carts. Both courses were busy. And so unless you had your name on your bag, you had no chance of getting a cart for you and your wife. It was players only.
So I get in at Sunday evening, and you had just wrapped up your second practice round. You pick me up at the hotel, and we go to Five Guys. It wasn't Culver's, but what'd you think about the Five Guys experience?
I love Five Guys. I don't think it gives up anything to Culver's, and I thought it was just very it was very on brand for us to go get kind of a fast food burger.
Not fast food. There's no drive-through at Five Guys. I mean, it's a sit-down burger.
It's fine dining there, but yeah. So,
I am a little bit shocked at the $9 burger. I paid $9 for that burger.
It's a good burger.
It's a good burger. But you can get the similar quality cheeseburger for what, $4.50 at Culver's, half the price?
I think some would argue it's a better and bigger cheeseburger.
At Five Guys?
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it was on brand for us. And so it was what we needed. I kind of got a kick out of it. We sat next to an Amish family while we were there that were just staring at your wife Olivia the whole time. They had like 7 girls. Did you see that? Or?
Didn't notice.
Oh yeah, the little girls were just staring at Olivia like she was a princess the entire time. And I was like, I wonder what those little Amish girls are thinking.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so we go to bed that night, and I say we because we're all in like the same room. I'm sleeping on the pull-out couch. You and your wife are sleeping in the bed. It's kind of separate rooms, but it's kind of not. Like we probably could have made eye contact if we wanted. But how do you sleep that night, Sam? The night before the biggest golf tournament of your life.
I will admit, having just one room for the both of us felt like no big deal at all. Of course,
got to get the whole team.
Yeah, get the whole team together. We can talk about the day. I wouldn't want it any way else. And then we got there, and it was like we probably could have gotten him a separate room. He doesn't have to sleep on this.
It was better that we were in the same room.
Yeah,
I mean seriously, it was better that way.
Yeah, I thought it worked out.
It would have been worthless for me to just have my own room. There's no story there. It's no fun.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
So, how'd you sleep?
Not very well. Just wasn't very tired. Kind of had an early wake up call the next day, but manageable. I was fine.
Yeah. So we get to the course. We have an 8 a.m. tee time, and we show up before 7. We're there probably 6:45. Would you say?
Yeah, I think so.
So one thing I didn't mention, but from the day before, when you're playing your practice rounds, you had mentioned to me that there were professional caddies that had come out during the practice round and they had scouted the courses. So as your caddy, I felt like I was, a step behind already because I wasn't there scouting the course, learning the course. We did have the yardage books. Actually, talk about the yardage books, how that works, because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it was. I was told before we got there that the PGA Tour, the same company that does the PGA Tour yardage books, was going to do the yardage books for this tournament, which is pretty cool, and they're pretty detailed and a lot better than the average yardage book you pick up at a course. So I had really good detail from that. The courses were pretty straightforward, but it was still nice to have some of that detail to see as I was playing the practice round.
But it's only cash.
It's only cash, which was, I don't know what kind of business they're running.
They cost, what, $25 per yardage book?
$35 cash per yardage book.
$35.
Yeah.
That's kind of a racket.
A little bit. It seems like they've kind of got a monopoly on the yardage books.
So we got our yardage books, but you did not have a caddy that was out there scouting the course. Did you feel a little bit behind?
I don't think I did, just because I feel like they had the excuse of, my guy just played in the Memorial and just paid me a pretty hefty check, I'm guessing, for what he finished in the Memorial. And you were getting paid exactly $0. And so
you got that room.
I got to, that's true. So I a little bit got what I paid for. But they started showing up Sunday afternoon to scout the course.
So we show up 6:45. I think my first reaction, and this held true throughout the day, was how normal it felt. Like, this was a massive field of, some of the best golfers in the world. Truly. Like, major winners, millionaires, some of the most famous golfers in the world. We show up at 6:45, and it felt like what I got to imagine every golf tournament feels like, whether it's, like the local municipal tournament or whatever. Like, there are no sponsors. There is no media. It is all volunteers. The local club pro is driving by the driving range, yelling at people not to hit it to certain parts of the driving range because the driving range is too small. And it's like, this just feels so normal.
Yeah, I had kind of the same reaction. Besides the fact some of the guys there was like, oh, this isn't quite normal. But for the most part, it felt just like a normal tournament and didn't feel as out of place as I maybe would have thought I would.
Yeah, so we go to the range. Actually, we started off, we checked in, and then we go eat breakfast. The first stop we make. Is that right? Is the first stop we make going to eat breakfast? Yeah. Mm. And we walk into this old clubhouse, and I'm walking to get my sausage and my eggs and all this stuff. And I kind of run into a guy, don't really think much of it. And then you and I sit down, and I look over, and the guy I ran into was Padraig Harrington.
Yeah, I think he was the only other guy getting
breakfast.
He was
like the only guy in there.
Yeah, free breakfast. I don't know what everybody else is doing.
and I said to you when we sat down, I was like, hey, that's Padraig Harrington. And you're like, I know. Like usually have a pretty good radar for that stuff.
I had to wait for him to get some bacon. And then about 5 minutes into breakfast, you were like, hey, do you know who that is? It's like, yeah.
The thing that struck me about Padraig Harrington, though, is, and this was true for almost every guy out there, he was wearing shorts and a knee brace. Like, he just looked like a normal middle-aged man.
He's not a normal middle-aged man. No, you should see him hit a golf ball.
Three-time major winner.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a thing.
Yeah. It's really set the tone for the day of just like a normal day, getting breakfast early with my caddy Tim. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And his accent is so thick, and he's got a really, really high-pitched voice. So that was Padraig Harrington eating breakfast. So then we go out to the range, and it's kind of the same thing with Padraig Harrington. Like, you look up and down the range, and it's Rory Sabatini, it's, Eric Van Rooyen. It's like you're starting to recognize guys all over the place. And right away, are you starstruck? Are you focused on the tournament? Like, what was your mindset like? Because I was kind of like trying to see who everybody was.
I kind of thought going in that I would be a little, not starstruck, but just like, oh my gosh, look at that. But I didn't really. I think it was just I had plenty going on for myself that I had to tee it up in an hour. And so it wasn't really that big of a distraction. It felt, again, kind of normal.
Well, it did feel normal. And I was looking around. I was trying to play it cool because my biggest thing was I did not want to look like a wannabe, and I also didn't want to look like a guy that thought he belonged but obviously didn't belong. So I purposely did not wear any golf brands at all. But I did sell myself out a little bit because I got that bib. I got the caddy bib.
You were a little needy early. I would have guessed, but I would have had the same assumption that you did, that, hey, they'll have a caddy bib for us. And so you asked for a caddy bib, and I believe they were like, I guess we can dig one up.
They dug one out from like the storage room. And actually, like, I'd say half the caddies had bibs on, but all the cool caddies did not have bibs on.
That is, I can confirm that.
Yeah, like Fowler's caddy did not have a bib on. Like, the PGA guys weren't wearing bibs, but like the rest of us did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my reactions of the range were, first of all, once again, not totally impressed with the range. Like, you couldn't hit a driver or a 3-wood on the right side or the middle side of the range. You had to hit all those onto the left side of the range. But it was really clear, to me at least, who the PGA guys were on the range and who weren't the PGA guys, just off of like level of focus and professionalism alone. Did you notice that?
We talked about it a little bit, and I've kind of seen this in the past. If you go to a PGA Tour event, I haven't been to many, but when I've seen them play, it is just everything is so slow and methodical and
businesslike.
Businesslike. Yeah, like they've done it a million times, which they kind of have.
And we had got a bunch of rain the night before, which actually where our hotel was didn't rain, so we were a little surprised at how wet the course was when we got there. And so one of the takeaways I had with the range is the other professional caddies out there, they have a job to do at all times. And so on the range, I'm cleaning the clubs, of course. But what I noticed was, since the balls were wet, the caddies were also drying off the balls before their players hit the balls too, because they wanted them to hit clean, dry balls. And so that was a takeaway right away for me. I did not do that for you prior to the rain delay, but I did do it after the rain delay.
I noticed that you picked up on that. It felt like a weird thing to be like, Tim, would you please clean these golf balls?
But that was my job.
Yeah. I think it was. I think the biggest thing is just like when I have to, like when I'm hitting drivers, so I have to touch them every time, and then we're drying hands. I think that's mostly what it's for. They might have been cleaning them every time.
They were cleaning them every time.
But it did feel weird to be like, hey, Tim, will you do something about these wet golf balls?
Right. So we figured it out.
We got it.
So after the rain, I mean, how'd you hit them on the range?
Okay. Just fine. Nothing. I was mostly, I don't really worry about how I hit it on the range before a round. It's mostly just to warm up, and so I didn't think much of it.
All right. Well, then we go over to the putting green. And at the putting green, I saw one of the most striking human beings I've ever seen in my life. Rafa Cabrera Bello is unbelievably good looking.
Stunning.
Like, I mean, you can attest to this, right?
Yeah.
This guy is so good looking that he feels like he should be like royalty somewhere. And not only that, but then his caddy is not quite as good looking as he is, but also like, the second best looking guy at this golf tournament.
That's debatable, but it looked beneath them to be at a golf
right.
to be at any golf tournament, let alone just a qualifier. It felt like he should just be exempt.
Yeah. I mean, you could tell right away, like, these are famous people.
I think it was the first time either of us were intimidated all day. We ate breakfast with Padre, and then we hit balls next to Ricky, and we didn't even flinch. And then seeing him on the putting green really rattled us.
Oh, I don't know if I said this, but going back to Ricky on the driving range, There was a lot of great golfers on the driving range, but when Ricky Fowler stepped to the driving range, he owned the driving range.
Yeah. He's just a very famous person, almost beyond golf. And so it was a little different with him. It was even like, I mean, everybody there had played a lot of golf. They had seen a lot of guys, but it did seem like
everybody was aware of him.
Yeah,
when he
everyone
came
was
there.
kind of which I'm sure he is aware of as well, which is probably not that fun for him to. I'm sure it wasn't that fun for him to be at this golf tournament because
he seemed like he was
hasn't
having a good time, though.
He did. He just hasn't had to do this in a very long time. So I'm sure it wasn't that fun for him to be there.
You know what was weird about seeing Ricky in person was seeing the Olympic tattoo in person.
I don't even think I saw it.
It's just on his forearm, and I was kind of watching him swing, and I was like, oh, that's right. He has the... And it's one thing to see something on TV, and it's another thing to see it in person.
Do you think he got caught up and regrets that a little bit?
That was kind of my reaction when I saw it in person. Was like,
because it was a big deal. They're bringing back golf. Maybe he loves the country and loves the Olympics. But
I wouldn't.
You have to wonder.
But I didn't play in the Olympics either.
That's true. You can hardly say that.
But back to the two best looking guys on the course on the putting green, Cabrera Bello and his beautiful caddy. They're doing this putting thing with like watching them on the putting green. You could tell that these guys were a team. And it was like watching a symphony take place while you watch these guys on the putting green because they had this like string thing that they did. And this was new for me, but you had seen the string thing before.
You were blown away by the string. The string is a pretty standard practice drill. You stand over top of it, you line it up with your line, you putt underneath of it. It's a pretty easy way to kind of measure your stroke. But you saw the string and you were bumping me like, are you looking at this guy with the string on the putting green? It's a power move to pull it out on a like warming up for a tournament. It's generally a practice drill, but they were really getting locked in.
I was thinking like, Sam, do I need to go to the pro shop and get some string right now? Do we need to get the string out here?
I left the string at home. I did not did not bring a string.
So we go from the putting green then to the chipping area. And we were in the chipping area. There were only 3 players there. You, Padraig Harrington, and then the Hammer kid from Texas.
Cole Hammer.
Yeah, and I want to start with Cole Hammer because Cole Hammer we saw like all day. Like every time I turned around, Cole Hammer was there, and it felt like I made eye contact with that guy all throughout the day, which made me think that like if this guy is looking around as much as I'm looking around, he must be like fresh meat. He must be new. I didn't think this guy stood any chance, and he's playing in the U.S. Open right now.
You told me he looked nervous, out of place, and he is playing golf as we speak at Torrey Pines in the U.S. Open. He was perfectly comfortable, I imagine, and did just fine.
The moment I knew I was wrong on Cole Hammer was I thought, like I said, I thought he was kind of like one of us. It's like, hey, you're out of place, so am I. Like, let's hang out all day. I kind of had that feeling with Cole Hammer all day. Then we get to the second course in the afternoon, and 10 kids ran up to Cole Hammer and asked for his autograph on a flag. And I was like, wait a minute. Who's that guy?
He and I are not the same. We both had an A next to our name, but we are not the same type of amateur.
Yeah. Well, okay, so back to the chipping green, though. What I noticed about the chipping green, and back to like my role as a caddy, is Padraig Harrington is hitting shots out of the sand, and he is hitting them to his caddy, who's standing on the green, who's catching them in a towel, and he catches like 5 in a row, and then he cleans them off, and then he runs them back to Padraig before he can hit 5 more out of the sand. And while he's doing this, I'm just standing by your bag watching you hit chip shots, and then you're collecting your own balls. So at that moment, we were like, hey, Tim, you actually should be catching my balls for me.
It's another thing. It's like, I'm not going to look over and be like, hey, man, would you go grab these golf balls for me? I'm perfectly capable of going to get them. But it was like, that would be kind of nice if my caddy was up there tossing them back to me.
Had you ever had a caddy before doing that for you?
No, that was a big part of it, too. I never really thought any part of what you were doing was lacking because it's like, I've never had that. I've never had that experience, having a caddy catch I would never make a caddy catch balls out of the bunker because the fourth one would probably take your head off. But I've never had that done for me in the first place, and so it's like, you're perfectly fine.
It was cool to get a glimpse into how these teams work together, right? Like these guys have been working together for a long time, and you know, you and I we're just starting out. You know, we've been like, you know, I mean, you analogy again.
That was tough to
I know. Yeah, we're just starting out, so we're learning one another. We're building our relationship together, and hopefully someday, like we're an old married couple that knows how to take care of each other without even asking.
I mean, that was the dream right there. We witnessed it. In 20 years. I hope we're right there. I think we might have a little different path to get there, but I just think the comfort level is something to aspire to.
That's right. We'll got a really good start.
Aside, but the comfort level with each other, I think we can get there.
So, okay, we head up to the first green. We're all warmed up at this point. And we head up to the first green, and let's go through our playing partners. So it's a threesome that we're playing with. We're playing with Billy Gaffney out of Buffalo, New York. So this guy's out of Buffalo, New York. On the third hole, I asked him if he was a Bills fan, and he told me he fucking hates all football players. So then I stopped talking to Billy Gaffney after that. The other guy that we're playing with is named Tyler Koivista. It's actually, his name ends with an O, but it's pronounced Koivista, which I thought was interesting.
I'm learning that right now.
I thought about that the whole day. I was like, man, it is an O at the end of his name, but it's pronounced Koivista.
Didn't know that.
So Tyler Koivista won the Northern Ireland Open last year in 2020. So he's got him, and that got him on the European Tour, got him status on the European Tour. He's currently playing like half on the European Tour, half on the Challenge Tour. He's originally from Minnesota, so this is a Midwestern guy. His world golf rating, can you guess it?
I'm going to go 525.
Did you look at my notes?
No, I have no idea.
He's 568 in the world.
Pretty good.
Yeah, so pretty good. So Tyler Koivista, he's a pro golfer.
Yeah, yes.
So first impressions of our group.
I really had no idea what to expect. I didn't look up much before the round. I knew they were both pro, but that can mean a big variety of things. And so I didn't really think much of it.
Billy Gaffney had played on the Adams Tour back in 2017. Career earnings under $1,000.
Did not know that.
And now I think he's just a club pro up in Buffalo, New York. I did talk a whole lot to Billy. Actually, he's not in Buffalo, New York. He's actually down in the Tampa area now. But he originally heralds from Buffalo, New York. He did tell me that. So I will point out the caddy situation here because, I'm measuring myself up against the other caddies here. And Tyler Koivista's wife is his caddy. And what was her name again? Oh,
I don't remember.
Jane. Her name was Jane, and she was awesome. Yeah. She was a really good caddy. At first, I thought, it's just the wife carrying the bag for the professional golfer husband. But we found out really quick that, no, she's really good at this.
Yeah, she was a legit caddy.
Yeah.
Which it's terrible, but it caught us off guard a little bit because he called her in for a shot on about the second hole, and we're like, "Oh, this is her job.
Yeah.
This is not because they're excited to be back in the U.S. This is because this is what she does."
Yeah, and then the other caddy was a longtime PGA Tour caddy. At least that's what he told us, and I can't remember his name, but it was something like super Irish. His name was like Frank O'Leary or something like this. And I could just tell right away, like, this guy, he was talking to everybody on the range beforehand. He was, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm Frank O'Leary. How you doing? And that kind of thing. I was like, we're going to be in for a treat with this guy. And, it took him about one hole for him to tell us that he was a PGA Tour caddy forever.
Yeah, for a long time. I think he told me his first U.S. Open final qualifier as a caddy was 1978. So he had been around. A while.
Yeah, this guy had been around. And so that's our group right away. So hole one, about 400 yards or 380.
Yeah, a little under that.
So what was it, 360?
I think it was 365.
365, right down the middle. Sam, you couldn't ask for an easier first hole. What are you thinking on that first shot?
Just thinking it's a layup of a first hole. It's a really tough course and pretty long and rough's thick everywhere. I was thinking this is a good place to have an easy start.
So you missed the fairway by about 30 yards to the right.
30 is generous, but yeah.
You hit it probably 340 yards over some trees to the right, essentially on the driving range. And so your second shot, you are hitting, and I am basically looking back over my right shoulder at balls coming at me on the driving range while you're hitting the second shot. We already talked about the rough on this course, so we're at Brookside here. and the rough is super, super thick. And I remember you saying while you're looking at your lie, like, this is almost an impossible shot.
It's kind of a coin flip every time you hit it into the rough. That's one of the things I was thinking on the first tee is like, really be nice to put this in the fairway and have an easy little pitch shot up to the hole. And then I hit it about 40 or 50 yards right and got up there and the ball was just absolutely buried. And I was kind of short-sighted over a bunker. And so when I got to the lie, I told you, basically the goal is hit it long into the rough because I was short-sighted and the bunker was going to be pretty bad short.
Right.
And so I thought if I could just hack this out, land it somewhere around where the hole is and roll it over, that would be a success.
And you hit a phenomenal shot. Like, you hit a really great shot within 6 feet.
Yeah, a little lucky. Landed just over that bunker in the rough and one hopped up and ended up about 6 feet.
6 feet. We got a great look for birdie on number one. You missed the birdie putt.
Yeah, I did. The first few putts are always kind of the nervy ones because it's a little shot. With a driver, you can kind of it's all right. You're swinging hard, but those are just it's such a soft little move that the nerves kind of feel. But I felt like I hit an okay putt and just kind of like hit the top lip. And I mean, it was a pretty easy putt, and I should have made it. But it wasn't like I felt like I hit a terrible putt and I didn't hit the hole from 6 feet.
Right. So we talked about, I'm going to call him Frank O'Leary. I don't know if that's the guy's name, but yeah. Like, he's Billy Gaffney's caddy. And I got a kick out of him because on the second hole, he goes and pees off of the tee box into the woods, which I thought that was hilarious because, like, I've peed in the woods on golf courses 100 times, but I didn't know you could do that at the U.S. Open qualifier. So I was like, oh, okay, it's fair. I mean, there are 15 people watching us. If
he does it, it's fair game.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's done 40 of these.
Right.
So
So that was funny. And then he lights up a dart on the second tee. And I just thought that was also hilarious. Like, smoking on the golf course is something that, like, I've heard John Daly does, but I've never actually seen it.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a little bit alarming. And I think you sensed because of how early he lit up the first cigarette, you gave me a 1. Like, you were going to count him.
Yeah.
Because you knew we were both in for kind of a long day, and he was gonna light up.
He ended up smoking 4 cigarettes that I saw.
Yeah, and they were all early.
They were all early.
Yeah. Maybe he was working out some nerves.
Well, because later in the day he had his hands full with Billy, and he just couldn't.
Oh, we didn't play with him in the second round, so
no. But helped. After the rain delay,
yeah, that's.
I mean,
true.
the wheels fell off for Billy Gaffney.
Yeah, for a couple of us.
Yeah, I mean, more for Billy.
Barely.
Sorry, Billy. So anyway, the other thing, we have a rain delay that happens midway through the 5th hole. But before we get to that, on the 3rd hole, you have a great drive in the fairway. And we encounter a rule that I was not aware of. Because on the second hole. It was the second hole. Okay, so it was the second hole. So it was, I think, a par 5. Mm-hmm. It was a par 5. You pipe a driver mid fairway. Left side of the fairway, but basically middle of the fairway. Great drive. We come up to your ball, and there is a puddle in the fairway.
We had not seen a fairway at this point. We started walking so far right that we didn't even sniff the first fairway. And so we started walking across the fairway, and it's like, these are really wet.
We couldn't believe how soggy it was.
Yeah. And so we got up to my ball, and I just glanced over. This is a pretty straightforward ruling. You just find dry ground, closest you can, not near the hole. Pretty straightforward. And I looked over to a playing partner and said, I've got casual water. I'm going to take a drop. And I put a tee down and picked up my ball. And he went, whoa. He said, don't we need to call out a rules official?
I was panicking a little bit.
Yeah, you were like, I think we need to call somebody in. It's like, this is the most straightforward thing that you could possibly do. And so I just took relief about 2 steps away where there wasn't water.
Well, then you handed me the ball to clean, and I asked you, I was like, can I clean the leak?
And I said yes, and I think you asked me 3 or 4 times more throughout the day, are you sure I can clean this? You did not feel comfortable.
I didn't
with
at all.
Casual water relief.
No. Well, not only that, but there was a divot. Remember that? There was a divot in front of us.
It was mine. It was my ball mark for my
It was your ball mark.
And my ball backed up a little bit because they were so soft.
And it was one of these divots. It was so soft that, like, the mud and the grass were sticking straight up. And so I went over just to step on it. Like I wasn't going to fix the divot. I was just going to step on it. And you caught me like mid-step and was like, hey, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's probably the worst part about golf is just like the pettiness of the rules. And any casual fan watching golf would just be like, are you kidding me with some of these rules? But that is one of the rules. You can't repair anything between you and the hole. So because my ball backed up, you can't fix that ball mark in between me and the hole, because technically that would give me an advantage, even though it's not. It's more built for like around the green. You can't fix a ball mark off the green. Right. You can't fix something so you could putt it. But I don't think
was me stepping on that fixing it?
Yeah,
it was.
I think so. I didn't want to get a penalty 1.5 holes in.
I don't,
and it seems very unlikely. But it was like, let's not fix that.
Yeah. Yeah, you caught me like I kind of like my foot was almost I almost did it.
You might have cut a corner.
I almost did. Which is funny because like in the very first time I caddied for you, I was messing up left and right. And here like same thing, and it's just like there's a lot of rules. You take for granted how many rules
there's a lot of rules. And I don't really think about it either because I've played a lot of golf tournaments.
Yeah.
But it's like every time you do something like that, it's like I think about like there's a lot of rules. I mean, I gotta it's not unreasonable for this guy to step on this ball mark, but I did have to stop you.
And so I will say, because I was caddying with 2 other caddies, one longtime PGA caddy, this guy knows what he's doing. He's telling us about he's best friends with Greg Norman's caddy, and like I mean he's telling us all the stories, right? And then you have Jane, who's like obviously a really good caddy. And I find out real quickly, I'm the worst caddy in this group by a mile. And that was new for me because I'm used to being just, Johnny Hustle, doing all the stuff that nobody else was. But this is their jobs. They're good at it.
The first round, like local qualifying, it's kind of about hustle. And the U.S. Amateur that we played a couple years ago is also kind of about hustle. But this was a little bit more than hustle. You looked at me. I think it might have been the second green, just rattled. No, it was a little bit further maybe because you said, I haven't touched the pin yet.
They kept beating me to the pin.
Yeah, they kept beating you to the pin, and you weren't ready for it, and you were a little shaken up. And I think the ball mark played into that.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have let you have that one and just let that one slide so you could be a little more comfortable.
Well, this is the first time we've played where we've had all the caddies in the group.
Yeah.
And so we have clear etiquette on when to pull the pin, who takes the pin out, and who puts the pin back in. And it really just makes a lot of sense, right? If your guy's putting first, you pull the pin. If your guy putts out last, you put the pin away. So the caddies are doing this dance behind the scenes while the players are putting out. Like one guy pulls the pin, and then the caddy that it's obvious their guy's going to putt out last walks over and gets the pin for them. It's a little extra movement. It doesn't make a ton of sense, but it's caddy etiquette.
It makes sense if you think about the caddy is always with the player.
Right.
Just because if I'm 40 feet away and I want to putt, it makes sense for you to pull the pin for me. And then, if I tap in, it makes sense for then the last person to putt.
Right.
To then grab the pin so they can.
Because the other groups are already on their way. Yeah. Sometimes it just makes a lot of sense. Sometimes it's like added movement.
Yes, agreed.
So we mentioned in a rain the night before, we're even through 4 holes. You teed off on the par 3, number 5, short right of the green, kind of on an upslope. And right as that happens, it's not raining out, but we hear the air horn that indicates rain is in the area. We're calling it rain delay.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you thinking at that point? You're even par.
Yeah.
You're even par at that point.
Yeah. The weather had just changed a lot leading up to the tournament. And so it was kind of like, I had no idea what the weather was going to be, but we weren't supposed to get any rain until the afternoon. So I was really surprised that there was. And then as we were walking off, there was a kind of a little rain shelter close to the green. And so we had asked a rules official driving by, we said, hey, can we just stop in the rain shelter? And he said, we are advising you not to stop in the rain shelter. Right. And so that was when I got the idea of like, oh, this is probably a longer thing. It's not like, because they stop it for lightning. So there was clearly lightning in the area, but sometimes it's like, it's just kind of brushed by and it wouldn't be very long. And we were kind of a ways from the clubhouse. And so that was the first indication I got that this was kind of a longer rain delay than that.
So this actually led to maybe the coolest part of the whole thing, though. So we have what turned into be like a 3.5 hour rain delay. And I'm kind of panicking a little bit because I have to get home that night. Like, I'm playing this dance where I've got to get home that night because I'm flying out to San Francisco at 5:30 the next morning. And if I don't get home that night, my wife's going to kill me.
Which you declined to tell me. You had not told me quite how serious the Monday night deadline was.
So I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to have to think about it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just told my wife, Tori, I'm going to be home. Don't you worry about it. And then I told Sam, I was like, Sam, I have to be home. But I didn't want you to have the weight of the Flattery family vacation on your shoulders, right?
And I appreciate that. What a sacrifice.
Yeah. So, but in the back of my head, I'm thinking like, hey, I have to have an extra flight for that night in case Sam we have a rain delay and Sam has to play the next morning. I also had a rental car reserved in case I needed to drive through the night. So and so during the rain delay, you didn't know this, but I'm checking like all my apps at all times just to think like I have to be home or else Tori's going to divorce me. But we have this 3.5 hour rain delay and it is caddies and players only in the clubhouse. And so everybody that we talked about from the field, all the professional golfers are in the same clubhouse for 3.5 hours. And it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that part was, it was pretty cool.
And so we go into the clubhouse and at first we're kind of lost. And so we end up sitting at essentially like a picnic table and we're like, it's Sam and I and 2 rules officials. And we're like, oh, this kind of stinks. And granted, right behind us was like the European table. So it was Padraig, Martin Laird, Rafael Cabrera Bayo, Eric Van Ruin. They were all and them and their caddies were at that table. And then like Harry Higgs and a bunch of those got like friends. You could tell they were all getting along at another table, but we didn't have anywhere to sit. But then your buddy is in the next room over and was like, come over into this room.
Yeah. The first indication that it was going to be a longer rain delay was being told to come into the clubhouse. And the second was when we sat down. We didn't really know who was sitting there because it was kind of empty, but it was reserved. There were a bunch of hats reserving tables.
Yeah.
And then we sat there for about 5 or 10 minutes. And who came back were a bunch of rules officials, and they all loaded their plates with some of the leftover breakfast. And we thought, like, we're in for kind of a long delay here because these guys are settling in.
So what was your buddy's name again?
Nate Yankovic.
Nate Yankovic, who actually played really well that day. Mm-hmm. Professional golfer.
Mm-hmm. Old teammate of mine.
Old teammate of yours. Great guy. And he's originally from Columbus. And so he's in the adjoining room. And he said, hey, we got 2 extra spots over here. Come over here. And so you and I are walking around trying to find this adjoining room. Finally, we find it. We sit down with these guys. And once again, I usually have a pretty good radar out for this stuff. I didn't even realize that we just entered the cool room.
It did feel like the cool room.
It was a smaller room, about double the size of my family room here. And in that room was Ricky Fowler, Rory Sabatini, Hudson Swafford, Joel Damon. Who else was in there? I mean, that might have been... Cameron Davis. Actually, Cameron Davis was outside on a rocking chair with his caddy. But who was that other guy? There was one other guy in the corner. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. But we were in there in that room for 3 hours with these guys. And Sabatini was the loudmouth of the room. He was talking about what cars he likes to drive. He told some story about driving from Boca Raton to Miami in like 15 minutes and going 150 miles an hour.
In a Cybertruck, a Tesla Cybertruck.
A Tesla Cybertruck. And at that point, Ricky Fowler from a different booth just said, bullshit, and called him out. And then they started having a little bit of an argument over who was a better driver, which I thought was interesting because everybody knows Ricky's a good motocross guy. Mm. And then at one point, Ricky gets up and he's like within 3 feet of me, and he's just showing Hudson Swafford on his phone where him and Michael Jordan like to play down in the Dominican Republic. And he's laying out like the Airbnb you got to rent down there and the course down in the DR. And all of that was just really, really cool to be a part of.
That was kind of the first moment that was like, we're not quite. The golf was kind of I didn't know when we were going to get back out on the course. It was like, this is a little different than a normal tournament that I play.
It was cool because we definitely felt like we were behind the ropes. Nobody else was allowed in that room. And so that was really cool. So it felt like we were in on the conversation. Like those guys were having really unfiltered conversation, and we got to be a fly on the wall for it for like 3 hours. So like we were having our own conversation, but it was one of those things where when Ricky talked, everybody, the whole rest of the room shut up.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing. He was just kind of the one guy that's just so much more famous than everybody else in the room, and probably why he didn't want to be there, and it wasn't that fun of a day for him, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was cool, and I'm kind of nerding out and fanboying out right now, but it was just kind of neat that we were all in that room waiting out this rain delay, and we're all in the same boat, and like Swafford and Damon and Fowler, and they're just kind of like, you know, scooching past us at times to look out the window to check the weather. And like, it was just kind of no big deal because like we're all golfers and caddies. But this was the first time that I thought like I look like I don't belong because I still had my bib on. And I might have been the only caddy.
You might have had the only bib in the room.
I know I had the only bib in the room. And so like I definitely looked like the noob at that point. I had a Patagonia hat on with a bib.
Yeah, I didn't even notice. But looking back, you probably did feel a little self-conscious in the Brookside Country Club.
I didn't
bib.
Until I went to the bathroom and I walked by Ricky and his caddy, and it was like, oh god.
I wish I didn't have this stupid bib on.
I know, but at that point, like I just had to own it. You know, it's like, hey, I'm the bib guy.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if somebody asked, I was like, yeah, I'm a caddy. I got my stuff in the bib. Like I had a lot of things in the bib.
You did all day.
Okay, so that was the rain delay. It was really cool. We end up going back out there, and you know, just it wasn't a great round of golf.
No.
It started off like you're even par, but then you had that second shot on the par 3. I think we both felt good about that shot coming out of the rain delay, but like you kind of chunked it, and that was just kind of the telling for how the rest of that 18 was going to go.
Yeah, it just all unraveled after that. I even told you when we were warming back up to go out, like I'm feeling pretty good. I hit the ball pretty well in the 15 or 20 minutes. Like it was a little bit of a shaky start because those were kind of easy holes. I made 1 birdie, 1 bogey. I'm even, feeling okay. And then made that quick bogey. And then I turned around and made a birdie on the next hole. So again, I'm feeling okay.
Yep.
But then it just all unraveled. I mean, I didn't do the math, but I probably went 6.5 or 7 hours without a par between rain delay and when we came back. Because I made a couple birdies in there, and it was just all bogeys.
Yeah.
It was just driving it in the trees.
What was it, like
greens.
13 holes without a par or something?
It was something crazy because I bogeyed 3, birdied 4, bogeyed 5, birdied 6, and then just a string of awfulness. A couple birdies in there, but a lot of bogeys, a couple doubles. It was just a disaster after that.
I remember we celebrated the par.
Yeah,
it was like
it was like hole 17 was the next par I made.
And it was like, that's our first par in 13 or 14 holes.
Yeah.
And at that point, we were kind of loopy. And, and we were kind of like, we were making fun of ourselves for celebrating the par.
Early. Yeah.
But okay, so there were a couple of high points, though, even though things started to unravel a little bit. Actually, what I thought maybe was the peak of the unraveling actually turned into one of your better shots of the day. I can't even remember what hole it was on, but it was a dogleg right par 4. Shorter par 4, dogleg right. You just uncork a drive, and you think you lose it so far right.
We played the wrong tee in the practice round, and so they moved us up a little bit, so it was only like 350 over the corner, and before it was like 380. And so I thought I had to hit a little left of the green, and I just blocked it right of the green, so I kind of thought, again, I was gone. And I was coming off a short par putt that I missed. So, yeah, that was a low point that turned into kind of a high point.
Well, so you're pin high. You hit it pin high.
Yeah.
And we got up to the ball. We were actually looking for your ball like 30 yards behind where it was. Mm-hmm. And then a rules official, bless his heart, says like, oh, it's up here by the green, which was great. And I remember there was a par 3 where we were a little bit backed up next to the green. And Harry Higgs, actually not Harry Higgs, Hudson Swafford was on that. He hit one OB and he had to come back. And I remember him looking at us being like, who the hell drove one over there? Anyway, did you birdie that one?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you birdied that one. Had a nice chip and then birdied it. So we were kind of back at that point. And so after that birdie on the par 4, we have a par 3. And I think the only cool thing about that was Harry Higgs. We were backed up, so Harry Higgs was there. And it was kind of cool that his group, we were kind of talking with his group a little bit. And Tyler Coivista hit a really nice shot. And Harry Higgs said, nice shot to Tyler. And for whatever reason, that became a joke among us.
I think... So got a good break on the par 4. Hit it what I thought was way right. Ended up right next to the green. Made birdie. And we were like, okay. Like, deep breath.
Finally a break.
Deep breath because it's a golf course that just beats you down. You don't hit it out of bounds. You don't lose a ball. It's just you hit it in the trees. The rough is thick. Yeah. You make just a grinding bogey.
Bogeys feel like good scores.
And it just grinds you down. And I hadn't hit a fairway in so long. Finally got a good break. Make a birdie. Go to the next hole. And pull a 5-iron, 40 yards left. Thought I hit it out of bounds. Somehow it's in bounds. Hits a tree. It's in bounds. And make another bogey. And so then when we were walking up the next hole, I think it was the first time we had addressed the...
It was a par 5.
Yeah, it was a par 5. And it was the first time we addressed the giant elephant in the room. Like, this isn't going very well, is it? Like, we hadn't really talked about overall, how's this going? Is it over?
You're right.
Like, it was like we hadn't addressed it at all. And so we finally kind of broke that with like, we'll always have the fact that Harry Higgs said nice shot to the guy in our group. Because that was about the highlight of the day so far.
You're right. Like, at the par 3, the sun finally came out. And so as we're walking down, you just piped a drive on the par 5. And I think I was saying something like, the sun's out. We're trying to qualify for the U.S. Open. Like, there are brighter days ahead. And then you cracked the Harry Higgs joke. And I just died. It was the funniest thing I've ever heard.
It felt like we were both already tired. We weren't even done with one round. And it felt like I was 30 over par at that point. Because it'd just been such a miserable time after the rain delay.
What's funny about that is your next shot after the joke was your second shot on this par 5.
Yeah.
And I go run into the woods to pee. And this is like the 6th time that I've peed already. But I miss your best shot of the day.
One of my only good ones. Yeah.
So you hit like a 2-iron from 200, how many, 240, 260?
255.
255. You hit a 2-iron to probably about 12 or 15 feet.
Little further, just rolled up the hill.
Yeah. It was on top of
a ridge.
The green, and you had a great look at Eagle.
Yeah.
And I missed it because I was peeing in the woods.
Yeah.
So that was kind of funny. And you birdied that one. And so that at that point, we could joke a little bit more about we haven't made a par in so long because you had a couple birdies in the last few holes.
Yeah.
So anyway, you shoot an 80 on the first 18. Kind of like you wanted the 79.
Yeah, it was bad enough that I actually lost track of where I was. I hit the first one of my only good drives of the day on the 18th, and thought I needed birdie to break 80. And it was like things were going so poorly that this is what I was thinking about in the 18th fairway. But it was like, I get a wedge here. It'd be really nice to make birdie, break 80. And then I made bogey and went to sign my card and realized I made bogey to shoot 80. And all I needed was a par. So it was bad enough that I actually lost track of how many over par I was. Yeah. It did feel worse than that, but
so we go to the lakes for the second 18 pretty dejected. And this is the first time that we get a look at the scoreboard. And your dad had said to me early in the round, he's like, your dad, Jim, great golf fan. He said, you know what I told Sam? I said, have fun and don't get last. And so as we're in the car driving between rounds, I'm like, I'm pretty sure we beat Billy Gaffney. And I don't think we're in last, but like we got to check here.
I was scared to scroll down.
So Gaffney was like shot an 87. He was 15 over. And you shot an 80. And the thing was, since Brookside was the tougher course, half the field had awesome scores from the lakes. So, you were in like 130th place out of 150 at this point.
It was not looking good.
It was not looking
Didn't love my chances.
But you
going
weren't
over
anywhere
the next
close
course.
to last.
Yeah. I wasn't in last, which I was a little,
Yeah.
I beat the guy in my group, but I thought that might be the only guy. But I did beat a few guys.
Yeah. I mean, you were.
Not many, but
Yeah.
there were a couple.
We weren't really in danger of last place.
No, it didn't feel like it.
Yeah. So we go over to the lakes, and I think the thing that struck me about that is like I was expecting like shuttles or something, and we had to drive ourselves over there, and there wasn't a lot of time because of the rain delay between rounds, and like we hadn't eaten anything in like 6 hours since Podrick Harrington and I ate breakfast together.
Yeah, we had about 35 or 40 minutes, and it was about a 25-minute drive. So it was just rushed because they were trying to get in as many holes as they possibly could.
So we get there, we eat a burger really quick from the tent, and we rush up to, you hit a couple of putts, I think, and we rush up to the tee, and as fate would have it, as we're getting ready to tee off with Tyler and Billy, well, first of all, Billy, we didn't think was going to show up for the second round because him and his dad was following our group, and him and his dad were bickering the whole round like children. And Billy kept saying that he was going to walk off the course. He was done. He was kind of having a meltdown, actually. And we were a little bit surprised that he showed up for the second 18. And so we're playing with those guys again. Tyler and his wife were great to play with. And then we're teeing off, getting ready to tee off, and we get the word that Harry Higgs and another guy had withdrawn. And so there was a guy behind us that needed a playing partner. Would we stay back?
Yeah, it's not uncommon. In this tournament, it's just not uncommon for, especially the pros. If they play a bad first round, they're just out. So I think the guys behind us, one of them was Matthew Neesmith. He had like a sponsor event the next day at the PGA Tour event that week in South Carolina. And so he left during the rain delay because he was like, we're not going to finish today. I'm out. And then Harry dropped out at 18, which isn't very uncommon. But then a rules official came up and just said, hey, would one of you mind dropping back? Because you guys have 3, there's 1 behind. We'll just play 2 twosomes instead.
Yeah. So we get paired up, and this was the best call of the day, by the way, because
it was.
It was night and day. Our morning and our afternoon were night and day different because we had a blast in the afternoon. And our playing partners, it was just Sam and I, and then we had this guy. The golfer was named Angus Flanagan, who was an amateur, played at University of Minnesota. He's a Walker Cup guy, originally from London, even with a name like Angus Flanagan. He sounds Scottish or Irish, but he's English. And he had a Walker Cup bag, which was kind of a flex. And then his caddy was this young guy named Kevin Kwiatkowski was his name. I looked him up. And a couple of facts about Kevin. I looked this up. He might be a professional disc golfer. There is a Kevin Kwiatkowski.
This is all news to me.
Yeah, I looked this up today. And I think he played golf at a community college, so Columbus Community College. I think he played there, but then later graduated from Ohio State. But these guys were both young guys, fun guys, good guys to be around.
Yeah, agree.
Okay.
Yeah. It was also, we had known kind of the whole day, but it was really settling in once we got to the lakes that we weren't going to finish today, and I wasn't going to have a round that was worth coming back to play the next day to finish.
Right.
And so I was already, we both knew I was withdrawing at the end of today. Whatever we got in
Right.
was the end for me.
So what do you think Angus's world golf ranking is? And by the way, this was Angus's last amateur tournament. He was turning pro the next day.
What was his amateur golf
Or
ranking?
his official world golf ranking.
So that includes professionals.
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea. I bet he was 750.
1897.
1897. I'm pretty sure that's like all there is. I think there's like a tie for last, and that might be it.
Yeah, maybe
'cause he wasn't pro.
He probably doesn't have
I think
many
it wasn't. Yeah,
points or whatever.
He probably doesn't have any pro. Yeah.
So, like I said, things are totally different on this round, and it just had a totally different feel for it. The course felt different. The vibe felt different. The air felt different. And then you started playing really well, and you got into like a really good groove, and it was fun.
Yeah, I was kind of loose at the second one. I knew the course fit me a lot better anyway. And the energy at the second course was fantastic.
Yeah.
It was kind of a party atmosphere around the clubhouse. We walk up to the first tee and a drunk guy looks over and is like, "Hey, how are you guys?" Like he knows us. And it was
he's like, "Who's the Hawkeye?"
Yeah, and it was like people were really having fun at the second course. And I had kind of gotten over what just happened in the morning round, and was hopeful I could play 14 or 15 good holes.
You're right. Like there were a ton of like mansions on the course with barbecues and parties going out in their backyard for this event. And so people were cheering for us and, offering beers to your parents as they followed us around. It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was. It was a much different feel than the first course.
And you had Angus and Kevin, who are both really, really good guys and fun to play with. And I think we got along really well with them. And it just helped like make it feel like, just a really fun round of golf.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I really enjoyed playing with those two. I'm really glad we were able to drop back.
Did you think Kevin was a better caddy than me?
Yes.
So Kevin's a local guy. He's not Angus's regular caddy, but you could tell this guy, like, I don't think he would admit it.
I also think you thought he was a better caddy than you, because about 3 holes in, you looked over at me and you said, "This Kevin guy says he's not trying to be a professional caddy, and that's bullshit." Because
he was trying to be a professional caddy.
You saw how seriously he was taking it, and he was doing a really nice job.
Yeah.
And you were, I don't know if you were intimidated or what was going on, but it flustered you a little bit that he was downplaying it.
Yeah, Kevin, like, I knew right away. He's one of those guys, he's probably like 23 years old, but like he acts like he's 43 years old. Like he's been around country clubs. He's played a lot of golf, so he's got like that demeanor about him. And like on the second hole, actually before the first hole, he's like, "Hey, what was your name?" He's like, "I'm Kevin," and I'm like, "Hey, I'm Tim." And then like 30 seconds later, he's like, "I'm really sorry, man, but what was your name again?" And I was like, "Oh, this guy means business. We're gonna have some good rapport here."
Yeah.
And at that point, I said, "Kevin, remember my name. It's Tim, okay?" And I was just kind of joking with him, But I realized really quickly that like this guy was gonna out hustle me, and so I had
normally your strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And about hole 5, Kevin and I are talking. He's like, "How long you been carrying Sam's bag?" And I a couple of years now, And he's like, "Oh, he's asking like we have a, professional relationship." And I was like, "Actually, our wives were sorority sisters." And,
it's not that serious.
And then he goes, "Well, you have caddied before, right?" And I'm like, 12 years older than this guy,
It's a bit of an insulting question.
Yeah, he's kind of talking down to me, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I mean, I have caddied before," and but I knew right then that I can't mess up after I've told Kevin, and so I out hustled him a couple times. He out hustled me a couple times. I'd say it was a draw between Kevin and I.
Yeah,
you might disagree, but I'd say it was a draw.
I think what tips the scales is that, and this is something I hadn't even thought of, but about you were probably busy fixing something that I ruined, maybe raking a bunker or something, and I was up on the green and I marked my ball, and he walked by with a towel and just flashed his hand to me like, "I got your ball, your caddy's busy." And I thought, I like my guy. I mean, we got a good relationship, but that's not something he would do for another player, and that's another level.
Yeah, he did that twice.
Yeah,
he did it twice, and he also shot your yardage for you with a rangefinder once.
Yeah.
While I was fixing your divot, I look over, and you're over there flirting with Kevin, and he's giving, because I had your rangefinder.
Yeah, in your pocket,
in the bib.
Pocket. Yeah, in the bib.
By the way, Kevin did have a bib.
Yeah.
So,
maybe his only weakness.
Yeah,
was having the bib.
The other part of it was Kevin was great, but Angus was great too. And you and Angus had actually, since you're both Big Ten guys, you recognize one another.
Yeah, we both had kind of recognized each other. And then on the first hole, he asked if I had played in like the Big Ten championship at Baltimore Country Club, which I had. And I kind of recognized him and he recognized me, but just because I'm sure we were at quite a few. He was a couple years younger than me because he was just graduating now. But I'm sure we were at a few tournaments together when he was at Minnesota.
And he was a lot of fun. So, 4 fun guys together. How could you go wrong? And so not only that, but being that Angus was turning pro the next day, we got glean a lot of fun information out of him. You know, like, hey, do you have an agent, or what's turning pro look like, and what do those contracts look like? And he was just really open with us. I don't think we should share a lot of what he shared with us. You know, we'll keep it in the clubhouse talk there. But it was fun to talk that with him, and he saw us kind of as peers, and so it was fun to have those conversations with him over the course of a couple of hours.
Yeah, it really was. That he had a much different amateur experience than I did, just because, I mean, he's a top-level amateur and played in a lot of big stuff and has an agent coming out of college. And so that was just kind of interesting, and he's a really nice guy and kind of willing to open up with us about, like, exactly what his summer looks like and what it looks like for him turning pro.
The other part that I thought was interesting is because he's a European guy, like, unlike the thousands and thousands of American amateurs that are trying to make it, there's just less Europeans trying to make it in America in amateur and professional golf. So he's tied in with the Shane Lowrys of the world and, like, a lot of the Europeans who have made their living here in America. And so it was cool to get a glimpse into that. And I think it puts him on a faster track than, like, an American of comparable talent.
Yeah, it does seem like there's kind of a camaraderie there with European guys. And maybe that's just because of he's a fantastic player,
right?
And he's that good that he runs into a lot of those guys. But it does seem like there's a different dynamic between European players, professional and amateur, just because there are fewer of them.
I thought it was cool. So we're talking about the second round going a lot better, and you're actually 1 under on the second round through 12.
Yes,
and at that point, like, if you're following our round, you're thinking Sam's the better player than Angus. Like, if you're following at that point, it's a small snapshot, but, like,
maybe. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing is that I'm not sure if you would, because it was kind of obvious he was not having a good round and he was, like, even par. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff that, you know, an 80 wasn't out there for him, but it was out there for me.
Yeah.
Like, that was his bad round, and he was maybe even or one over, you know, and that's just what kind of a good player looks like when they have a bad round, is that, you know, they can kind of hit it around a little bit and still scrape it around for a round even.
And I didn't mean to say that as a slight to Angus.
No,
he's a really good player, but you were playing well.
Yeah.
And it was fun to get in a really good groove. You know, we had a long day already, and it was fun to just kind of, you know, put a bunch of pars together, make a couple of birdies, and just play a lot different round of golf. And, like, we had, you know, some people following us at that point too, and it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a much better experience in the morning.
I mean, there was even a point where, like, I think Angus recognized it too, and he's just like, "Hey, man, why didn't you turn pro?"
Yeah, I would have said that he wouldn't have asked me that if he played with me in the morning. It was never my good rounds that discouraged me from turning pro. But there's plenty of reasons.
And really, I don't know how you look at this, but the way I look at it is you're 1 under through 12, and it becomes very clear at that point that we're not going to finish. Yeah. Like, the darkness is coming, and we can see that, like, hey, we're probably going to have to withdraw here because the darkness is coming. We're not going to finish the round. And at that point, we really started to rush. And I almost, like, don't even count the last 4 holes that we played. I think you double bogeyed maybe three of the last 4.
I remember them all.
But it was like we were, like, racing up you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, Angus was really pushing the pace. He was really trying to finish the round because he really wanted to get done because it was his last ever amateur event.
Yeah.
But, you know, it was tough to play that way in a tournament.
I mean, it was just tough because I just felt like I made a few really lazy swings. Long par 3, and I just blew it way right under a tree and kind of had no chance. And then probably my worst shot of the day off the next tee out of bounds, when out of bounds was absolutely not in play. And I hit it about 5 feet out of bounds. And so it really stings to make a few swings like that to close. But yeah, it was just a weird last few holes.
Well, and your last one was just kind of a train wreck.
Yeah. Yeah, in the dark and just like trying to punch out. Yeah,
and Kevin shooting the yardage for that was where Kevin shot the yardage.
Had a wedge from the middle of the fairway and made 7.
I was like, I might have been fixing 2 of your divots.
You were 2 divots back, and he was getting a yardage for me. It was it was tough.
Yeah, I mean, but it was just like we were trying to play so fast at that point that it wasn't really golf.
Yeah,
I mean, you know what I mean? Like it wasn't tournament golf.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I appreciate you making that excuse.
No, it was true though.
Yeah,
heck, I couldn't even keep up with the bag because Angus, and we like it, but he was really trying to finish.
Yeah,
and like he was walking up way ahead of us, and so it just put like a level of pressure, and it was just kind of a shame the way to end the round that way. But that's the way it goes.
Yeah,
like this isn't. This isn't everybody gets a trophy type of thing. This is you're trying to make the U.S. Open.
Yeah.
Right. And so, but that is the way things ended for 34 holes.
Yeah.
So walking off the 34 holes, I mean, just where was your mind at? And at that point when you're thinking about like, that was it.
I felt okay at the end of the day. Just like it disappointed obviously in the last few holes, but it's like, okay, I actually strung together some holes, and like I'm glad I played decent for a 12-hole stretch today because I wasn't sure that was going to be the case in the morning. And I was also just so tired. We had got to the golf course probably 13 or 14 hours earlier than that I just wasn't thinking that much about the day.
Uh-huh. So I've got a couple of questions to wrap things up. But before we get to that, as we're finishing the day, we're kind of standing in the darkness outside of the clubhouse at the lakes. And everybody's turning their scorecards in, and Ricky Fowler's like kind of right next to us with his wife. You pointed out his wife, not me. His wife was there as caddy, and everybody's kind of taking pictures of Ricky there, which was kind of a shame. I snuck one in too. But it was cool to see Ricky there at the end of a long day because it was a super, super long day at that point. Mm-hmm. And I think the thing that this actually went viral a little bit. So Ricky goes to his car, and we kind of all see him go to his car. And then sure enough, there's like 15 kids that follow him. And at that moment, all of us are like, you got to be kidding me. Like, who are these kids' parents?
Yeah, I was, boo-hoo for the millionaire golfer that's like super famous. But it was also like he just had the same day we did, and he just had a way longer weekend than we did. He was at the Memorial the whole time.
And we were so tired.
And at some level, like, that's what the money's for. But also, it was such a long day, and he just had a line of kids following him and his wife to the parking lot at like 9:00 in the dark. And he had to come back the next day. He was still in contention. It wasn't over. And he had to come back the next day after that day, and he had to go sign, I don't know what it was, 20 autographs for kids.
Right. So there was a picture that went viral of him in the parking lot. Then shortly after this, of him signing autographs for all those kids. And frankly, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah. I think
like I would have walked off.
Yeah.
I was so tired. I wasn't ready to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw me that night. Like I didn't even talk to you guys on the flight. I fell asleep on the flight home.
Yeah. It was it was rough.
Yeah. I mean, so that was kind of the wrap up of the day. So in hindsight, Sam, 2 questions for you. First question is, we've talked a lot about people. A lot of people have no idea how big the gap is between maybe where you're at and the guys that are playing on TV. And a lot of people out there think, well, if Sam plays the best round of his life, he could be playing in the U.S. Open. Personally, I don't think that's like a complete fairy tale. But, there's a difference between Eric Van Rooyen and Sam Meuret. How far apart do you think you are?
I think it's wide. So the US Open thing is tricky because it's like, that's one day. Could I have the best round of my life and maybe get close to qualifying for the US Open? I think the answer is yes. But I think the difference is day in and day out, every single thing they do, their dispersion is just smaller than me. And you do that over and over and over on the golf course. they end up beating you by a lot. If that dispersion with every single shot is a little bit smaller, they make 1 out of 10 more putts than you do. If you do that over and over, they just end up, they end up beating you by a lot. And the difference just watching, like when you say, I'm playing the second round, you couldn't tell the difference between me and the other guy. That can happen for a round, but the difference between getting to that place is really big.
Right.
So I don't know if that makes sense, but the difference looks small, but the actual gap to get there and to close it is really, really wide.
Right, and that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I kind of relate everything to pitching, right? I was a pitcher, and pitching and golf are pretty similar. They're both kind of fine motor, athletic things. And I always thought, like, the biggest difference between guys in AA and guys in Division I and guys in the majors and all the way up, every level you go up to the major leagues. And similar with golf, with college golf, Challenge Tour, Korn Ferry Tour, PGA Tour, whatever it is, they just make less mistakes. Mm-hmm. The talent gap isn't as big as you might think, but the mistakes gap is. In every level you go up, it's not so much a big talent reservoir. Granted, there are going to be guys like Mike Trout and Tiger Woods that are out there, but the large majority of the guys are talent level pretty equal. It's just less mistakes all the way up. Yeah. And I think golf's pretty similar in that, talent-wise, a lot of guys are pretty similar, but the guys that make it are the guys that just consistently make less mistakes. And the line is pretty thin, right?
Yeah, I think it appears thin just because if you watch, my best shot versus somebody else's best shot, like they look pretty similar,
right?
But the difference is it's really hard to close, even if it looks thin. Mm-hmm. So those fewer mistakes are so hard to clean out that the gap is actually wider than it appears.
So we're not talking about making the PGA Tour here. We're talking about making the U.S. Open.
Correct.
Okay. We're talking about 54 holes of golf, 1 local qualifier, and then a final qualifier. What do you think the odds are, number one, of you getting back to where we were this year?
I think they're okay. It's tough because you just don't get that many chances. I mean, once a year is just kind of, it's just kind of tough.
Yeah, anything can happen.
But ever, I don't know. I think they're pretty decent. Like, I think I'll be back there at some point.
Uh-huh.
But is it 8 years from now? I mean, that feels forever away.
What do you think? Is it possible for you to put together just one great day and crack the top, I guess qualify at that thing?
At final stage?
Yeah. Do you think that's in you?
I think it's possible, but it's incredibly unlikely. Right. Yeah. I mean, just because it is one day, it's right. Not you put me out on the PGA Tour, I'm just going to get beat down every single week.
But if you put together the best 2 rounds of your life in one day.
Yeah, I think, I'm close to getting
close,
there. Yeah.
I think so too.
My best rounds.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think you're right about the variance of misses. You miss pretty big when you miss.
Yeah. Part of that is I hit the ball pretty far. And so when I miss, I really miss. Uh-huh. And that's what those the guys on PGA Tour that hit the ball a long ways, I am just blown away by how straight they hit it. Even if they're not hitting that many fairways, I am blown away by how small their misses are. It's just crazy because some of the guys that hit it shorter, they pull it, they push it, they're in the edge of the fairway. If those guys hit it on the same line, they're in the trees. Mm-hmm. And so it's they actually have to be straighter with their driver than the guys that hit it shorter than them just to keep it in play. So that's why the top players in the world hit it really far, because they also hit it really. There's a lot of guys that hit it far that don't ever make it there. Right. But the top in the world, they figure out how to hit it straight and far, and then they do everything else well.
What I really like about your game too is not just that you hit it far, but I think a lot of people would think Sam must not be able to putt very well. You're actually a pretty good putter.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm okay putting.
You handled those greens in Columbus pretty well.
Yeah, I don't actually know if I 3-putted all day, which is probably a bad thing considering how many bogeys I made.
It wasn't
it wasn't the putting.
It wasn't your best putting day.
I didn't make much, but yeah.
You missed maybe a handful of putts. I've seen Sam normally makes these.
Yeah.
For sure. But like putting's not really the issue. I think that kind of the short iron thing is the difference. Is that really, I guess, the separation for a lot of guys? Or
I really think that day and most days it's actually the long game. It's it's definitely like wedges too and short irons. But I was out of play so often that there was just no way to get in a rhythm.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that a better short iron player or somebody with a better short game couldn't have played a lot better than I did from where I was at. But I didn't put the ball in play at all, and I basically had no chance. And that first round, I was in the trees all day, and it's thick rough. You're in the trees. You're punching out. It's like I wish I would have gotten some more of those up and down, but I really didn't give myself a chance with the long game.
Mm-hmm. Is this a thing that you want to continue to try to do? Like, or is it like, every year I'm going to get a little bit worse?
I'd like to keep trying it.
You know what I mean, though?
It's entirely possible that I get a little bit worse every year.
Right.
I'm not ruling that out. But yeah, I'd like to keep trying.
Yeah. Cause I think, you're a really talented player and you have great game, you know? And I look back, I'm 10 years older than you, which I was actually surprised. You're 25, I'm 35. It didn't hit me till like 2 days ago that I was like, I'm actually 10 years older than Sam.
That is a little surprising.
Yeah. But like I felt like I was at my athletic peak at like 28, 29.
I got things to look up to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Things start going downhill after 33 or so. Let me tell you from experience. But like you still got some of the best years ahead of you, which is kind of fun to think about.
Yeah. It's also entirely possible that I get better as I stop swinging so hard.
Right.
Maybe I get older and I stop swinging as hard. I think I've lost distance even since college just because I don't play as much. So it's kind of tough to keep it up.
Okay. So the other question, the last question, I guess, is going to be like, I want you to critique me as a caddy in an honest way. And then I'm going to critique you.
Okay. I'd almost like for you to start, and so I know. Okay. You know, what can I get in? How far are we taking this?
Well, you can be as honest with me as you want. Like, I'm not going to take offense to it. Here is what I think as your caddy. I think if you want to make the next leap, I think what you need to do. And this is coming from like me watching you play, 100 holes of golf. And I'm actually curious because I never watched you in college at all. But I got to imagine that the critique of Sam is that there's just a lack of structure.
In what way?
In like preparation and in like for instance, when we're warming up, you say to me at one point, I forgot how to warm up.
Yeah. I don't. I do remember saying that to you. I think it was when we were headed over to the chipping green because I was asking you what time it is, and I was like, I forgot how I do this because I hadn't legitimately warmed up for a round in a few years. So I'm not sure how much that applies in the past, but it's entirely possible.
So you're a pretty like easygoing, free flowing guy.
Yeah,
like that's Sam. Like you're never gonna be Rafa Cabrera Bello, where you got like all the gadgets, or who's the old timer guy that does the yoga? Jimenez. You're never going to be that guy.
Yeah.
But I think there is like a layer of that like you could incorporate, where it's like there's a stretching routine in the morning. As you get older, you need to start taking better care of your body. Like there's a little bit more of like, here's our plan for the range. Here's our plan for the putting green. Here's our plan for this. I think that's part of it. Cause like, as I looked at the driving range, like the pros were just really locked in and focused,
Yeah.
And we weren't.
Yeah.
And like, nor should we be. Like we're, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I'm not like making up who we were out there.
Yeah.
But like, if you're, I think there is maybe a portion of that we can incorporate.
I think that's a fair critique. Yeah. Some of the guys I played a practice round with, just talking to them about their routine and their schedule, was like, yeah, it was validation of like, yeah, it's I mean, it's just a tough life. It's a business at every level of pro golf that I just never experienced.
The other thing I would say is, as your caddy, just when things start going the wrong direction, you have a tendency to speed up.
That is something I've heard probably 100 times.
Yeah.
And I agree with it, but I also, my only pushback is like, is it a chicken or egg thing? Is it like I was playing fast because I was playing bad, or was I playing bad because I was playing fast? You know, it's like,
well, either one, you're playing bad.
Well, yeah, yes, but like, was that just was I going to play bad no matter what? I mean,
so I don't think it always matters because you're a great athlete and you're still young and you're in great shape and all that stuff. But in a 36 hole day, I think it matters.
Yeah,
and it like the way it ended, like we were going too fast and like it just. I think the speed really hurt us at the end.
Yeah. I also think there's an element of like tournament golf that just, I don't know if it's like nerves or what it is. It just kind of like speeds me up.
Yeah.
But that's something I've always heard. And if I've ever seen myself on video in a tournament, it's like, whoa, that's not how I, that's not how I remember that. Like that's twice as fast as I remember doing that.
And so those are my
definitely some of that
critiques. Is the speed thing and just a little bit more structure. And I think that's like partly is because like you're just I mean you're an amateur. You're not a pro golfer. Right? And so it's hard to be like, hey, you need to start acting more like a pro golfer when you're not a pro golfer.
Yeah, it's like I'll remember that 2 years from now.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And part of it is I think back, all I know is what I know. And those were like the things that as a pitcher I had to learn when I was like, you know, I would go too fast and I would do all this stuff. But once I mastered like, you know, some of that, I became just a lot better at it.
I mean, you picked up on something that I've been told a lot of times. So there's clearly something to it.
But I think you're probably a better golfer than I ever was a pitcher too.
I never saw you pitch.
I know.
Not sure.
That's kind of an interesting debate, actually. That's an interesting topic. It's
for the next episode.
Pretty comparable, but I think you're probably a better golfer than I ever was. Yeah, actually you are. I mean, Okay, so your final critique, we wrap it up. Critique me, caddy.
I think you're going to be disappointed in this, but I don't have that much. I don't have a ton of experience with caddies, and so it's not like, oh, normally my caddy does this and this, and so I don't have that much for you. I mean, the only thing I think is just kind of experience. I mean, it seemed like you were a little uncomfortable, like a few times. I mean, you got intimidated very easily. You weren't somebody you weren't comfortable with how you were caddying. Like you were always you brought it up a few times.
I was shell-shocked a little bit.
You're looking around at the other caddies. I think if I was looking around at the other players and be like, did you see how he just hit that shot? I think that would be your critique of me. So I think it's fair for me to say, you're looking sideways a little too often, you know?
You're exactly right on that. Yeah, I mean, right off the bat, I was intimidated by Jane. I was intimidated by Kevin, whatever his name was, Kevin O'Leary. Was I calling him Kevin O'Leary, like Shark Tank guy?
No.
Frank O'Leary.
Frank, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they were better caddies than me. Was there any point where you're like, a caddy could have saved me 2 strokes today?
No, there was not. No, I don't think there was. I felt good about my strategy. No, I don't think so.
All right. So, 3 things. I have 3 critiques of myself after watching Kevin, Frank, and Jane. So, first of all, the prep thing. If we ever get back to that spot again, or I mean, heck, even the local qualifier next year, I got to prep the course.
Yeah.
I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah, maybe.
I really do. I mean, at least as a caddy to make me feel more comfortable, because every hole I was looking at it for the first time.
Yeah.
And you were telling me what the hole was doing.
That's usually not how
it's
goes.
Backwards.
Yeah.
Second thing is, a better understanding of the clubs. Like, I have a pretty good feel for your game, and I'm never going to tell you, like, what to hit and what not to hit. Like, that's always going to be your call.
It never got testy between us throughout the day, but there was one moment where it almost did, because we were almost done.
Yeah.
And I pulled a club from the rough, and it was like, I'm expecting, like, big flyer. Like, this ball's going to go 20 yards further than my club normally does. I think I pulled 8-iron from, like, 205. And I said, I think this is an 8-iron. And you go, yeah, I think you're right. I looked at you, and this was late in the day, and we were both a little tired. I just said, were you ever going to call me off a club if I said I like a club? And it was like, it came off a little more intense than I wanted it to. I just felt like, hey, like, I know you said it's okay, but do you actually think this is okay? Do you actually think this is a good club?
I'm going to push
and
back
you
on
did
this.
at the time, and I thought, like, okay, I got it.
Because the hole before, you pulled a 9 from, I can't remember the distance, but I remember thinking, like, I don't know if it
was 175, down a little downhill, and you hated it.
I didn't like it.
Hated the 9-iron.
Yeah, and I questioned you. I said, I don't remember what I said, but I was like, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
I asked you a question back, and then you had to give me an affirmative response to do it.
And then I hit it short and made 6.
Yeah, I thought it was too much. And so, yeah, I mean, to that point, I guess I'm getting to know your yardages better, because with your game, it's like we're kind of hitting the same 5 clubs over again. And I think that's with most people's games.
Yeah.
So I get a pretty good feel of, like, oh, like you hit a really good draw on a 6-iron early in the, remember that one? Early in the round, around a tree. So it was like, okay, so we like the 6 from 210 or whatever that was. Mm-hmm. And, but like a caddy should be able to give you more reassurance. Like I said, you're always going to make the final call on the club selection, but it's always good for you to be able to come to me with at least a little bit of trust in me that I can, if I don't feel good about it, I can say something. Right?
Yeah, I think that's.
And then
more
you
fair
trust
than
if I feel really confident about it, then it makes you a little bit more confident.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Even though you know it's a little bit BS.
Yeah, that's all I called out at the end of the day. It was just like, because it felt like a ridiculous club to hit. It was just like, I think this is going to come up way short. But if it I can't go long here. It's kind of a lie in the rough that I thought was just going to jump out. I said 8, and you were like, I love it. And it's just like, why do you love it? Because this feels like it's going to come up 30 yards short.
Yeah, it's because we're going to hack it out of this 6 inches of rough. Yeah. That's why I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, the other part I thought was funny is our boy Frank, he was doing the whole caddy thing with Billy, and Billy shot the record worst round of the day out of Brookside. And he's talking about every club selection like it's the greatest club it's like the Tiger 3-iron or something. Mm-hmm. He's like, and he would talk about like what he wants out of it. Like, do you want the draw here? Do you want the fade here? And he's just like, and he would always just say, just nice. Hit that. Oh yeah, just nice. It's like, what the hell does that mean? It was obvious like they had never been together, but he was still trying to do the full caddy experience with him.
Yeah. We might need our own just nice.
Yeah. Yeah, like I don't even know. The other thing that I like about you is you like to kind of talk on the course. Mm-hmm. I think you, and maybe I'm wrong, but you like to talk through that stuff. Yeah,
I think so. It's kind of, I mean, that's part of what's nice about having a caddy. Right. You can kind of talk those things out.
But it'd be nice if I was able to provide a little feedback.
Yeah, maybe a little.
I'm a good sounding board.
Yeah.
Okay.
You loved everything I picked all day.
Except for that 9-iron.
Except for that 9-iron. And you were right.
And then the other thing is just the greens. Like, once again, it's always going to be your call. You're the player. You're the one making the stroke. But I am providing zero help on the greens. Like, zero. Even Kevin, who had never played with Angus, and I think Kevin had some familiarity with the courses.
Yeah.
But, like, Kevin was reassuring the line. I like that. I like that line.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you trust me, though.
I don't.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust me either.
No, I most of the time, even with a caddy, I don't bring anybody in, because most of the time it's just like, if it conflicts with, I'd rather pick a line that I like and like try to put a good stroke on it, rather than like second guess the line. But there are times when it's like, I don't know which way this goes, and like I would like a second guess, but I'm not.
Right.
I wasn't totally confident in bringing you in.
Oh,
Well, we had never done that before, and it didn't feel like the time to start.
No, the only time I've looked over one of your putts, I shouldn't have been looking over one of your putts.
I was putting the ball.
Yeah. All right. So that's it. We're still a tandem, right? Like,
of course.
You haven't fired me yet?
Yeah. No. We were going all the way to the end if I made it.
I still think there's hope for us. Like, I don't think this was our pinnacle.
Yeah, I've been one of my favorite things about you as a caddy is you haven't seen all the tournaments that I've played. So like I've done this 100 times and sort of seen this. I've seen this show before.
Yeah.
But you're very optimistic about my game. You're very complimentary, and sometimes that might be just what I need. I need somebody without the scar tissue that I have.
Yeah, that's true.
About my own game.
I like your game. I wouldn't want to be on the back for any other player. I do think your best golf is still ahead of you.
I'd love to hear that.
I mean that. I think there's something about like when you get out of college, when you get out of the rigmarole of like practice and it like becomes this job and you start playing for just like the love of the game. Back when you're like playing on your hometown course on a Sunday afternoon or something, and you kind of you rediscover your talent that you have along with like this newfound joy of the game, plus like this athleticism that you have in your 20s, like things can come together. I remember when I was not to compare us as athletes, but like one time I was playing in an alumni game at like 28 years old. And I was throwing at 92 miles an hour. And I was out of shape. And I was like, holy cow, like I might be as good as I've ever been right now. And I haven't, you know what I mean? Like that could have been as good as I was ever. And I think that might be out there for you yet.
I think there was a couple years ago, I mentioned to you, I still remember this. I mentioned to you, do you ever get a little bit depressed that like you're never going to be as good at a sport as you ever were before? I think it might have been dawning on me like a year after college. It was probably like my first winter not playing college golf. I was just like, this is rough. Like, it's just never going to get as good. And you were just taken aback and you hated it. And I remember you telling me, like, you cannot say that. Oh, I think you were, like, training for a race at that point. Like, you were going to break your own 400-meter record or something at the time. And you were just, you hated it.
Yeah, I don't like that thought at all.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there's a reason I throw bullpens in my backyard, right?
Mm.
Like, I don't think that I'm ever going to be as good at baseball as I was or basketball. Like, I think that ship has sailed. But I don't think I think my best golf is still ahead of me. Like I mean, there's a difference between like some of these sports, right? Yeah. And so I think there are some things athletically that my best days are still ahead of me. I'll never run the 40 as fast as I did 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. I'll never do. I don't think I'll ever hit 94 on the radar gun ever again. But I think my best round of golf, I think my best caddying days, I think like, I think some like a CrossFit workout, I think I can do some of those stuff in like short bursts. So it's similar to your golf game. Like I think we can, I don't think it's magic in the bottle necessarily. I think our best days are out there.
I like to hear that.
So on that note, Sam, we went a little long. Actually, we went about an hour shorter than I thought we would.
Felt plenty long.
So this is your third time on the pod. Let's hope there's a fourth.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah,
it feels like the bar is set a little higher for just getting on the pod.
Yeah, I mean,
you're past just every time you caddy. Us going through this whole thing again. We got to do something.
Yeah, it's got to be a noteworthy event, yeah. But I mean, I feel like next summer people are gonna be like, "Hey, are you and Sam gonna do any events? We fire the pod back up." All right. Well, Sam, and special shout out to your parents and Olivia, who were awesome, big cheering section. So, be remiss if we didn't thank them once again.
Of course.
And Matt, who didn't show up.
No show, Matt.
Yeah. No tuck-in shirt, Matt. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam.
Hey guys, thanks once again to listening to today's episode of the Moonlight Graham Show. And even though I do most of the interviews here on the podcast, there is a ton of work that happens behind the scenes that you guys don't see that make each episode possible. So I got to give a shout out to the Moonlight Graham Show team. First of all, Brian Sandvig, our producer. Brian does all of the post-production work, and in real life, he's not just a podcast producer, he's also a real estate agent. So if you're looking to buy or sell a home down in the Kansas or Missouri areas, give Brian Sandvig a call. Next guy on that list is Brendan Gargano. Brendan does all of our design and artwork here on the podcast. He's one of the most talented artists I've ever met, and I love all of his work. If you need any help on the design side with logos or anything like that, give Brendan Gargano a call. The next guy on that list is Andy Flattery, my older brother. Andy, of course, has done some of the interviews here on the podcast. He also is a certified financial planner. He owns a business called Simple Wealth Planning. If you need any help in that area, check Andy Flattery out. And then, of course, the trusty co-host Tom Griffin and my younger brother Neil Flattery. Those guys are just busy being husbands, being fathers, they're family men, but also they do a ton of work here on the show. So thanks again for listening. We really appreciate you guys subscribing and supporting the Moonlight Graham Show.